tonight we're looking at the House because there is an expectation of a vote on a non-binding resolution opposing the so-called BDS movement. Now, the resolution expresses opposition to efforts to delegitimize the state of Israel and the boycott, divestment and sanctions movement, which is known as BDS, targeting Israel. It also urges Israelis and Palestinians to begin direct peace negotiations, affirms constitutional rights of U.S. citizens, free speech, supports full implementation of U.S.-Israel strategic partnership, the Act of 2014, reaffirms support for a negotiated solution to the Israel-Palestine conflict, and about 75% of each party in the House is actually co-sponsoring this bill. Representatives Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar, who I mentioned earlier, they are among the Democratic lawmakers who oppose it. They raise questions. All of this raises questions about divisions on this issue and others in the Democratic caucus. Joining me now to discuss this is a lead sponsor of the resolution, Congressman Brad Schneider. So first, why is this resolution necessary?
Well, first, thank you for having me here and giving me the chance to talk about it. This is an important resolution. It makes essentially three arguments. One is that the United States supports a safe, secure state of Israel, a Jewish democratic state of Israel, and Israel's long-term security. Second, that the path to that long-term security is ultimately through a negotiated two-state solution. And then finally, importantly, it condemns the global BDS movement, boycott, divestments, and sanctions movement, because it opposes two states, it denies the Jewish connection to the land of Israel, and is seeking to delegitimize and ultimately destroy the state of Israel. So this resolution, bringing the House together, as you noted, it has almost 350 co-sponsors, three-quarters of both the Democratic and Republican sides, support this resolution, and I expect it to pass overwhelmingly tonight.
So those, especially those in your own party, who are not among those sponsors, co-sponsors, are not only opposed, they're loudly opposed. Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar are two of them. And Tlaib called it constitutional. It says it seeks to silence opposition of Israel's blatantly racist policies that demonize both Palestinians and Ethiopians. Your reaction?
So I actually spoke to her about that. This resolution does nothing of the sort. It does not stop any speech about Israel or anything else. It recognizes the legitimate purpose and just ends of boycotts to our history, but not every boycott is legitimate or just.
When you spoke to her about it, what did she say?
She disagreed, and I don't know that if she's read the resolution. This resolution recognizes the right of Americans to petition their government, to take actions, to express their views. But as I was saying, not every, in particular this case, BDS is neither legitimate or just in its effort to delegitimize the state of Israel, to refuse the Jewish aspiration for a homeland.
The House Speaker talked about BDS when she spoke to AIPAC, the American Israel lobbying group, back in March. Listen to what she said.
We must also be vigilant against bigoted or dangerous ideologies masquerading as policy, and that includes BDS.
I assume you agree with that statement?
100%.
So if BDS is bigoted, are those who support it, your colleagues, bigoted? Or in this case, because we're talking about Jews, anti-Semitic?
Well, I can't speak. There are a lot of people who support the BDS movement, but they may not necessarily understand the intent or the expression of how BDS movement is actually what it's fighting for. The fact that it's not just fighting against the occupation of the West Bank or Gaza, it denies Israel's connection to the land going back to 1948.
But you said you explained that to your colleague, Rashida Tlaib.
I have, and she has her narrative, and she has her experience. I'm less concerned about...
But you don't take it a step further and say that a lot of people who are looking at the opponents and listening to the opponents who very much support this resolution because they think BDS is anti-Semitic, they are ascribing that anti-Semitism to these lawmakers, your colleagues. You don't agree?
So I'm not going to subscribe it necessarily to the supporters, but the movement itself, its intent, its goals are anti-Semitic in intent. The expression of BDS, what we see on college campuses, the intent to create harassment, hostile environments for supporters of Israel on college campuses, to make it difficult for companies that are doing business with Israel in the United States and around the world, that is by its very nature anti-Semitic. The movement itself has anti-Semitic means, uses anti-Semitic means. That's why it's important tonight that we're going to have more than 75% of the House co-sponsoring a resolution condemning the global BDS movement.
I don't want to beat this anymore, but how does, if somebody supports a movement that you just very clearly laid out, you believe has anti-Semitic means and is an anti-Semitic movement, how do you disconnect or separate the people who support it from the movement itself?
So very simply, the fact that they support this movement, I believe they have a understanding of what they believe the movement does without fully understanding the impact of it.
Okay, last question. The congresswoman I was just talking about, Omar Tlaib, and even John Lewis are pushing an alternative resolution, as you know. They're trying to get a vote on a resolution that just says people should have the right to protest. What do you think of that?
So I don't think it's alternative. I think it's a parallel that supports people's right to protest. This resolution clearly states and recognizes people's right to protest, recognizes that boycotts have had a role in American history and making changes around the world. But the global BDS movement doesn't have a legitimate purpose. It doesn't seek a just end. It seeks the destruction of the state of Israel. When they chant at BDS programs, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, that is not a call for peace or two states. That's a call for the destruction of the state of Israel and the elimination of the Jewish people from the land. That is anti-Semitic. That is unjust.
Congressman Brad Schneider, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Thank you. And still to come, Boris Johnson gets the nod to become the new Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. And the key question is whether he can lead the country through Brexit.